You're welcome to today's episode of Chronicles of a Nigerian Woman. Today, I'm going to be reading Augustina's story. Take a listen. There's so much being said about marriages going bad after relocation outside Nigeria. I decided to add my voice to the discussion by sharing our story. My husband, Emmanuel, and I were both born and raised in Nigeria and had always lived there. We met at my friend's cousin's birthday party. I was invited by my friend, and Emmanuel was a colleague of the celebrant who was turning 30. They both worked in a bank. I was 26 at the time and had just ended a relationship after 3 years. I wasn't in a very good place emotionally, and my friend felt that going out would help me, so she practically dragged me along. I was not too eager to meet anyone because I was still hurting from the bad breakup where I suddenly found pictures of my boyfriend proposing to someone online. The worst part was that he said he was forced into it because the other lady was a long-standing family friend and he had no choice because he did not want to destroy the family relationship. But that's a story for another day. I was sitting quietly by myself at the party when Emmanuel walked over to me and tried to initiate a conversation. I was not too keen and I didn't hide it. After a few minutes, he asked if he could call me at a time when there wouldn't be so much noise and distraction. I gave him my number, more to get him off my back than out of interest. I didn't even take his number, so when he called me about a week later, I didn't know who it was, and I didn't remember his name either. He had to remind me about our conversation at the party. He turned out to be quite a funny person and deeply caring too. He could read distress in my voice, even over the phone, and he always had the right amount of comedy in his conversation to get me out of a dour mood. We started with him calling me weekly, and then the frequency increased, and soon I anticipated his calls every evening. I didn't want to seem too eager, so I never called him until one day about 3 months later when I got a promotion at my marketing job, and I just could not wait till he called me after work. So I called him myself to break the news to him. We had been talking about the promotion, so he was the first person I wanted to share the news with. He made such a big deal of my calling him that day, and we agreed to meet up at the weekend for the very first time since meeting at the party. I knew then that I liked him a lot and that I wanted us to take the relationship further. We made it official during our date. He was 31 and ready to settle down, so we ended up dating for just over a year before we got married. Emmanuel was a great guy in every sense of the word, but his one shortcoming was that he was quite traditional in his view of roles in marriage. He took care of all the heavy financial load, and he left me to take care of domestic duties. He would help out only if I asked, and even then, he only did the barest minimum. He got to me many times, but he was a great guy in every other respect, so I mostly didn't complain about it. We planned to start a family immediately, but I didn't get pregnant. And when the doctors checked after a year, they said we were both fine, so we just kept trying. It was towards the end of our 3rd year in marriage that I finally got pregnant, and it was very tough on me. I had to take a leave of absence from work in the 2nd month, and when by the 4th month I was still struggling with constantly being sick, I quit my job. To make matters worse for us, Emmanuel was let go from his job during a downsizing exercise about 2 months after I quit. It was as though the world was turning against us. By the time we had the baby, we had all but exhausted our savings. I couldn't work with the baby, and Emmanuel had not succeeded at getting another job. He had some wealthy clients from his bank job, and he reached out to a few of them. There were many promises, but nothing concrete. When our baby was 6 months old, my aunt in the US suggested that I apply for school and move over. Because of funds constraints, Emmanuel and I decided that I would go first, and then he and our son would join me when things were settled. I would leave the baby with my mom. Thankfully, things worked out as planned, but it took almost a year before we could raise money for me to rent an apartment and pay their way to come. Emmanuel got some real estate deals, and his family also supported him. That's how we were able to raise the money. We were so glad, and we thought things would finally go well from there. But our happy reunion was very short-lived. My schedule was packed full with school and working on campus to raise a few extra funds. Emmanuel's visa did not allow him to get a job, and our baby was too young to start school anyway. So I got the baby ready in the mornings and left them at home together while I went to school and work. When I got back in the evenings, the house was always such a huge mess. Dishes were left piled up in the kitchen. We had a dishwasher, but Emmanuel would not even load it up. I would find dirty diapers in the bedroom where he changed the baby during the day, clothes strewn all over the place, and he would be waiting for me to arrive and make dinner too. He didn't like American food, so after managing it throughout the day, according to him, he was entitled to eat at least one good meal. So he said, in the first month, I thought I would die of exhaustion, and I had to talk to him about it. It caused such serious issues between us because he felt I was only complaining because he wasn't earning any money. Somehow, he could not see my point. He kept insisting that if, when he started working, I would have to find a way around things, I might as well start now. When I told him that the only way around things was for him to start helping out with domestic chores, he said it was because we were now in the US that I was developing an independent mindset. Things got so bad that I was sure our marriage was over, barely 6 months after he came. The only thing that kept us together was that he had nowhere to move to, and I couldn't rent another place, and so we were forced to stay in the same house. Our mother's intervention was of little help because his mom supported him, and my mom supported me. I didn't want my marriage to end, but I honestly couldn't see any way out because there was no way I could take on more than I could handle by doing everything myself. I came to realize that I had played a huge role in the outcome of things because before we came to the US, I never insisted on things like this. I also realized that what we were experiencing was a huge culture shock. I had believed that our love and friendship would tide us through without realizing that it would be hard to overcome things that had been imbibed in each of us since childhood. Eventually, Emmanuel and I had a very long talk. I asked my aunt to take care of our son for a few days so that the pressure on us both would be somewhat reduced. She worked, but she had a couple of people she could drop our son off with for a few hours each day, so she took him off us for a week. During that period, Emmanuel and I had time to recalibrate. I made him see all that I had to do each and every day. And I think he realized for the first time how rough and difficult things were for me. I also realized that the whole situation was kind of dropped on him. One day, he picked our son from my mom, and the next day, He had to watch him for almost the whole day, prepare his meals, pick up after him, etc. It was a sudden shift for Emmanuel with no time to transition. It was something he wasn't used to. We agreed on a plan of how we could schedule things, and when we picked our son, things seemed a bit brighter. I finished school a few months after, and Emmanuel decided to pick up a PhD position that was funded. I got a job, and we put our son in daycare. Slowly, things began to pick up and to normalize. It's been 9 years since Emmanuel and our son joined me. We had one more child 6 years ago. Emmanuel decided to stay in academia, and I am working in tech. He is still not a fully domesticated man, but we're a long, long way from where we used to be. He wouldn't cook for anything in the world, but he does dishes, he loads up the dishwasher, he does laundry, he cleans without me having to ask. I order Nigerian meals and I store them when I'm too overwhelmed to cook. And sometimes we just eat out. I'm very happy with where we are right now. And I am grateful that we could get through that rough patch and hold things together, even though it did not seem possible at the time we were going through it. I believe that couples relocating from Nigeria need to be aware of the huge cultural difference in domestic lifestyle and to be mentally prepared for it. Otherwise, their marriages may not survive it. What are your thoughts about Augustina and Emmanuel's situation? What are your thoughts about this whole divorce after Japa syndrome? Share in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, to share with somebody else, and to subscribe to my channel. You can also take a moment to join the Valiant Women's Network by clicking on the link in the description box. It's a vibrant community of women where we get coached and carry out other interesting and fun activities to help each other thrive. Till I come your way again next time. Ciao!